Mhm. Uh, Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Creating Resilient Communities, a webinar series. We're excited to have you join us for our third episode of the series. I want to take a few moments to give you some basic housekeeping rules before we get started. We do ask you remain on mute during our presentations. While we do want this webinar to be as interactive as possible, our presenters have worked hard to prepare and have lots of great information to share with you. If you hear something that you find interesting or have a question, please give us a thumbs up or put your comments in the chat. We want to hear your thoughts, and we'll have a question and answer period at the end of the presentations. We have a packed agenda, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll begin this evening with remarks from Mr. Tyrone Wells, who serves as our operations manager. Mr. Wells, will you please unmute yourself and step into the virtual platform, please?
Thank you, Rashid. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome to the third session of the Creating Resilient Communities webinar series. Tonight's topic is response. Throughout this series, we have discussed how our motto, Creating Resilient Communities, impacts the work that we do every day. During a disastrous emergency or certain planned events, the decision may be made to activate the county's Emergency Operations Center, commonly referred to as the EOC. The EOC focuses on direction, information sharing, coordination, response, and providing critical services. These functions together enhance the county's response to all types of emergencies. It is extremely important to us as an agency to share information that helps you become better prepared for and respond to calamity that impacts you, your family, your neighbors, and others in the community. You are part of the whole community approach to preparedness, which strives to engage private sector, community-based organizations, and the public to understand risk and needs, self-empower, build relationships, and strengthen readiness. It is our hope, it is my hope that when needed, you can be self-sufficient and remain strong and resilient until help is available. Please enjoy the presentations this evening, and I look forward to your continued participation in the series. Thank you, Rashid, and thank you to all of our guests.
Thank you as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Wells. We will now move into our special presentations for the evening. Our first presenter is Ms. Charlene Flaherty, who serves as the Deputy Director for Public Safety Communications. Ms. Flaherty, will you please unmute yourself and step into the virtual platform, please?
Hello, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you. I'm Charlene Flaherty, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Office of Homeland Security Public Safety Communications. And I would like to speak for a moment on the role that 911 and public safety communications has in resilient communities. Next slide. When there is an emergency situation or a disaster, one of the first things citizens and residents turn to, the first place they turn to is 911 to make sure that they receive the help and assistance that they need from public safety personnel. When you call 911, you are assured that the personnel on the other end of the line are highly trained to take your call, process your call in a very professional manner, and make sure you get the services that you need. While they are gathering the information, you should be aware that as the information comes in, it is being processed by dispatchers and submitted to public safety personnel to make sure that you get the best services possible. Next slide, please. Last year, the 911 Center processed more than 1.4 million requests for services. This included 911 calls, processing alarm activations, and requests for non-emergency dispatch of public safety personnel. Out of those phone calls, 1.1 million incidents were dispatched to the county police, fire, EMS, sheriff, and municipal police departments. Next slide, please. When you need assistance from public safety personnel, you can call or text 911. And when you call or text 911, it's important that you only use this service to report emergency situations, fire or emergency medical situations, serious crime in progress, an immediate threat causing fear for your personal safety or the safety of others. And it's also very important that if you call 911 and you get a recording, that you do not hang up. When you get a recording, that means that there is a queue of calls waiting to get through to the 911 specialists. When you use text to 911 to request emergency services, please make sure that you remember that it takes longer for text calls to be processed. So please, please, please call when you can and text when you can't. Next slide, please. You can also contact our center for non-urgent requests for dispatch. And you can request those services by dialing 301-352-1200, or you can submit an online request for services. To request those services, you can process for non-threatening suspicious persons, theft, loud parties, vandalisms, lost property, road hazards, fraudulent incidents. Just be sure when you call 301-352-1200 that it is to report a public safety incident and that you're requesting dispatch. It is not a line to request information. If you choose not to call, you can also go into the non-emergency dispatch report system online by doing http://911.mypgc.us, and you can request services online. That information will go directly to a dispatcher for processing. Next slide, please. There's also options available that are outside of 911 that will help you get services. You can call 311 to receive information about Prince George's County government and to determine the appropriate agency to call or to address a concern. Some people, if they don't know where else to call for police department assistance, will call 911. And there is a new phone number that's available to request police information, and that is 301-516-9777. And that is a great option if you need to discuss concerns regarding police department services, to report activities that don't require police dispatch, to get a copy of a police report, or to obtain information on vehicles which have been impounded or towed. Next slide, please. We're also looking for people to join our team. So if you would like to join our team and be an emergency dispatcher or emergency call taker, you can apply online and be a member of our wonderful team to help make sure Prince George's County remains safe. Next slide, please. If you have any questions, you can contact either Director Gill at this phone number. You can contact me at the number listed, 301-352-1485, or my email address is listed on the screen, cfflaherty@co.pg.md.us. I sincerely hope you received a lot of information from this short presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Flaherty. If anyone has any questions for Director Flaherty, please drop them in the chat. Our next presentation from this evening Our next presentation is from this evening's subject matter expert. I do apologize. Ms. Shelley Gooding. Shelley is a Prince George's County National Capital Region planner. She is a certified emergency manager and holds her undergraduate and graduate degrees in emergency and disaster management. She's worked as an emergency manager at the federal level for local jurisdictions and in the healthcare system. Shelley, will you please unmute yourself and step into the virtual platform?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Shelley.
Okay, thank you. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. And I apologize. I know that this is coming up as a different name, but we had last minute technical difficulties. So in keeping with emergency management, we adapt and overcome. So good evening, everybody. My name is Shelley Gooding, and I am an emergency planner with Prince George's County Office of Emergency Management. This webinar is designed to help you and your family prepare yourselves to respond to an emergency situation by learning how to create a family emergency plan. How you plan for and respond to an emergency can make a significant difference in the outcome for you and your family. A family emergency plan is a terrific way to ready your family for worst case scenario. A family emergency plan guides the preparations, communications, and procedures for your family to respond in a disaster. A family emergency plan may help ensure that it is written down, that you commit it to memory, that you're able to educate all family members, and that you're able to practice it well. You may think that this will be a big project that you simply don't have time for. But I assure you, not only is it simple to do, but the peace of mind that you and your family will have when it's completed is well worth the effort. So hopefully you were thinking, okay, how do I create an emergency plan? By following these steps, taking some time to think through the steps, putting them in writing, and then practicing with your family, you and your family will feel more secure about how to respond should an emergency arise. There are 6 steps to creating a family emergency plan. During this webinar, we will do a quick dive into the steps to create your plan. However, it is encouraged that you follow up by visiting sites such as ready.gov and search Family Emergency Plan. First step is going to be your evacuation plan. So let's be honest, evacuation can be a stressful scenario. After all, no one wants to abandon their home to chance, knowing that their life's worth of belongings and mementos may be at risk of theft or destruction. Evacuations can occur voluntarily, meaning you choose to get out of harm's way ahead of disaster, or they can be ordered by the county. Although the county cannot force you to leave, it should serve as a big warning that you and your family are at risk from whatever the threat is, and you should seriously consider evacuating your home when directed. Some homeowners wait until the last possible minute to evacuate, hoping that the emergency will dissipate before it reaches their property. That's a risky and often fatal strategy. If you choose not to evacuate because you believe in your ability to weather the storm or don't think you're in danger of a natural disaster, you could end up being the people you see being air rescued on TV or worse. Many fatalities occur because residents ignore advice and wait too long to evacuate. You should never place you and your family at risk for the sake of material items. When establishing evacuation plans, you should consider which natural disaster threat your family is most likely to face and how quickly you'll need to respond. For example, if you're watching a hurricane expected to hit the region in the next few days, you'll have more time to pack up your belongings before standing in the way of destruction. However, in the event that a spontaneous wildfire jumps a freeway and threatens your home, you might only receive a 2-minute warning before it's too late, in which case a well-prepared evacuation plan will become incredibly useful. Your family emergency plan should contain instructions on what to do if you're ordered to evacuate, streamlining the steps required to get out of the door as fast as possible. You should take into consideration the ages of your family members and your family's special medical needs, as well as the following factors. know where you're going, and plan multiple routes. You do not want to rely on GPS instructions during an evacuation because there may be challenges in getting signal to your phone. Instead, know ahead of time which roads will take you to safety. Be sure that your pre-planned route avoids areas that might be made dangerous by the hazards at hand. For example, if you live in an area that is at risk of flooding, don't plan on taking any roads that travel near floodplains, rivers, or other bodies of water. Of course, you can't always predict where an emergency situation will occur or what evacuation routes will be inhibited. So plan multiple evacuation routes so that if one is cut off, you will have a second or a third option. And if you're in a situation where you know you might need to evacuate, stay up to date on road closures. Remember, your evacuation route should ultimately take you to a safe shelter that is removed from disaster. So regarding transportation, what happens if you don't have access to a vehicle, or what if a road damaging event occurs that renders driving impossible? Even if you have a vehicle, you should plan an evacuation route that includes a backup means of transportation. Plan an evacuation route that utilizes an alternate mode of transit. Identify alternative modes of transit in their proximity to your home. Know where a local bus station or train station is within walking distance, and consult the county government website to find evacuation services for citizens without vehicles. And of course, you can always make arrangements with family or friends who do have access to a vehicle. Protecting your home. If you suspect that evacuation is imminent, be sure to unplug all appliances and electrical equipment. Lock your windows and doors and consider shutting off your gas. If there is a risk of flooding, move furniture and appliances to higher ground. Your family emergency plan might designate these tasks to different family members so that they'll get finished faster. If you receive notice to evacuate your house immediately, do not waste time rearranging your home. When you must evacuate immediately, grab your preparedness kit and leave as soon as possible. Protecting your family is far more important than protecting personal items. Children may be naturally frightened during an evacuation. It is important to remember that children emulate the behavior of their parents. If adults appear overly frightened and in a state of panic, then children are more likely to be frightened and panicked too. If adults stay calm and collected, it is more likely that the children will stay calm as well. If you have a child, try to explain the reality of the situation with an honest but hopeful point of view. If the child has a preferred stuffed animal, toy, or blanket, be sure to bring it during the evacuation so the child may have it for comfort. And then also involve the whole family in your family plan. Including children in the planning and practicing of your family emergency plan helps children know what to do and helps them to feel calm should you need to put your plan in action. Take the time to teach children how to evacuate the family home in the event of a fire and where to meet outside once they get out. Practice with children regularly so that it sinks in for them. Like fire drills at school, we should have fire drills at home. For elderly and disabled people, make sure that you bring the necessary materials, wheelchairs and walkers, supply of backup power for electrical devices. If your elderly or disabled loved ones live elsewhere and you need to reach them in an emergency, be aware that the emergency may block access to their home or your ability to contact them. In the event that persons cannot be reached, make sure that they are aware of evacuation routes and transportation services, and that they also have access to an emergency kit in their home. Some family members might need handicap accessible transportation, so be sure to make proper transportation arrangements for them prior to the disaster if necessary. Keep in mind that some emergency shelters do not allow pets. Know a safe place where you can take your pets before disasters and emergencies happen. Keep several days' supply of food and water for your pet in an airtight, waterproof container. Include a backup leash, collar, and ID tag. Have copies of your pet's registration information and other relevant documents in a waterproof container and available electronically. Include pet shampoo, conditioner, and other items in case your pet needs some cleaning up. Include pet litter and a litter box if appropriate, newspapers, paper towels, plastic trash bags, and household chlorine bleach to provide for your pet's sanitation needs. If you become separated from your pet during an emergency, a picture of you and your pet together will help you document ownership and allow others to assist you in identifying your pet. Put favorite toys, treats, and bedding in your kit. Familiar items can reduce the stress for your pet. Plan with neighbors, friends, or relatives to make sure that someone is available to care or evacuate your pets if you are unable to do so. Make sure that you keep your address and phone number up to date and include contact information for an emergency contact outside of your immediate area. Meeting location. So what happens if an emergency breaks out and you and your family members are separated in different parts of town? In case of a separation, you should plan on a prearranged meeting place for you and your family to regroup. This meeting place should be an easy find, easy to remember, and far removed from the disaster area. Cell phone towers will likely be down during a natural disaster, so having the spot prearranged might be the only way that you can ensure your family regroups. Practice makes perfect, right? It is important to practice your plan in order for all family members to remember what actions they should take in an emergency. Practice also helps to keep a sense of calm in the midst of an emergency. Another important part of your family emergency plan is your emergency contact plan. During a natural disaster, it might be difficult to contact family members in your immediate area because of busy phone lines or dropped cell towers. So you'll want to establish a reliable form of communication. Consider long-distance emergency contacts. If local phone lines are busy, you could try calling people who live further away. Long-distance emergency contacts can be a helpful way to relay information to immediate family members that you can reach due to busy local phone lines being down. During the August 2011 Mineral, Virginia earthquake that impacted our region, many people could not get through to local numbers. However, they could reach relatives and friends outside of the region. Text messaging also can work during local emergencies when calls won't go through. Choose 2 or 3 people who live farther away and make sure that everyone in your family has those phone numbers written down or saved in their phone in case you can't contact each other. When you can't reach each other, this is a great check-in system for your family. You can call Aunt Jane, who lives in another state, and she can relay messages to each family member calling in. This way, everyone knows everyone is safe and you can proceed with your plans from there. If you have to evacuate your home, you'll need to find new shelter in a safe area. During emergencies that occur over a widespread area, such as hurricanes, you should seek shelter many miles away from the disaster area in a different city or in a different county. Make a list of both local shelters and lodging further away that you could evacuate to. If you have friends or extended family who live not too far away, you might want to ask them if you could possibly stay with them if you needed to evacuate. My colleague Rashid Plummer addressed in great detail during the preparedness webinar how to create an emergency kit and also the importance of having one. He also discussed the importance of protecting your vital documents. Should an emergency situation occur, you'll want to have all vital documents stored in a single waterproof container. These might include copies of your Social Security card, your birth certificate, passports, and any other official documents that may be difficult to replace. It also might be worth your time to scan in these documents and store them digitally on a cloud-based server so that you know you can access them anytime during a disaster. Staying informed is also going to be critically important during any disaster. I would encourage you to sign up for Alert Prince George's. Alert Prince George's is the county communication system that sends emergency alerts, notifications, and updates to your registered devices. It is information sharing between county government and interested participants who wish to receive critical real-time information. As a subscriber, you will be able to receive information regarding traffic conditions, government closures, public safety incidences, and severe weather. Users are provided with more ways to receive accurate, timely, and secure information before, during, and after an emergency or disaster. You also follow the Emergency Alert System, or EAS, which is a public warning system that may be used by local governments to issue important emergency information to radios and cell phones. These alerts are not affected by network congestion and are incredibly useful for staying up to date with the situation at hand. Some information that they can provide include impending hazards, locations of the nearest emergency shelters, and safe evacuation routes. Another great resource is the NOAA Weather Radio All Hazards. This is a network of radio stations that broadcast continuous information and updates from the National Weather Service. It's important to educate all members of your family about these information services, including how to access them. Spend time with your family learning how to tune in various alert broadcasts in case you're not there when the need for information becomes critical. Remember to write out your family emergency plan in full. You should print out copies to give each of your family members, and you should have one in an easy to find location at home. Keeping it somewhere in plain sight might help each of your family members memorize it. You'll never be able to predict all of the situations that could arise in an emergency, but a strong emergency plan will help reduce the dangers that come from panic, indecisiveness, and insecurity. I would also encourage you to take a look at our various resources. You can look at FEMA's website, for example, or go to ready.gov and search for Family Emergency Plan. This concludes my section of this evening's webinar, and I'd love to hear any questions that you may have. So feel free to go ahead and put any questions inside of the chat.
Great presentation, Shelley. Lots of great information to take in. I'm sure that we have some questions from our participants. So if you're not already done so, please drop your questions in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. Of course, the end of one chapter is the beginning of another. And before we wrap up this evening, we want to give you all a sneak peek of what to expect in our 4th episode of the series. Mr. Hassan Bahadur, will you please unmute yourself and step into the virtual platform?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Problem. And next webinar would be about the disaster recovery. Disasters disrupt hundreds of thousands of lives every year, having lasting effects both to people and property. Recovering from a disaster can be a slow and challenging process. The next webinar will provide you with tips and best practices to help the recovery process. Hope you would be able to join us on Tuesday, October the 19th. Have a great evening.
All right, we've reached the end of this evening's webinar. And before we wrap up, we do have a small favor to ask of you. Your feedback is very important to us, and we would like to know how we did this evening. So please complete our survey. The link is in the chat. We also want to encourage you to register for our next episode. I want to thank you all again for joining us and have a great evening.